Okay, so we're just a few days away from the governor's budget address, which is one of the biggest events of the year in Pennsylvania politics. So what is it exactly, and why should people care about it?
Well, I think it's an exciting time of year. We begin a new session, and the governor presents his budget for the upcoming fiscal year that will begin on July 1st. We're wrapping up the fiscal year that ended this year. Essentially, the budget address is sort of like a State of the Union, where the governor lays out his proposals for the upcoming fiscal year, his spending plan, new initiatives that he wants to see move forward, new policy that he wants to promote for Pennsylvania, spending to address the challenges that we face as a state, different proposals that the governor and his team have essentially come up with over the past year. I think in a lot of cases, and probably in this case, we'll see some things that were presented in last year's budget, but essentially that gives us a starting point then to begin the budget process. It's not just a one-time thing. The governor's proposal isn't the budget that will be enacted hopefully by June 30th, which is the end of the fiscal year. The new fiscal year starts on July 1st. But it begins the process.
So you're looking at a starting point, basically. This isn't he gets to present his budget and then you guys salute. You have to talk about this, right?
Yes. Essentially, the budget address is the governor saying, look, here's where I am. Here's the amount of money that I want to spend for these particular projects or these particular policies or these particular initiatives, and then we will go through the process of conducting budget hearings. We'll break down the budget, see what he's proposing, and then the budget hearings occur, this time they're scheduled for the last 2 weeks in February, the first week in March. And that gives us the opportunity as an Appropriations Committee to really dissect the budget. My committee members will ask questions over those 3 weeks of the different administrative positions, the different departments, find out why they're looking to spend this money, how they're looking to spend this money, what it's going to be used for, how it's going to help Pennsylvania, and we can ask hard questions. You know, is it too much? Is it not enough? What did you do with your last year's allocations? You know, do you still have money left over? What are you doing in other areas related to policy? You know, what are you doing to streamline your processes? What are you doing to cut costs? All those types of things can be asked during the budget hearing process. And then that gives us sort of a base point where we can start from as well. So the governor comes in it here. We go through the process of doing budget hearings, and ultimately we want to see where we are. And so what happens in a good budget cycle, good budget negotiations, is the governor comes in here, House Republicans, Senate Republicans come in here, and then we collaborate, we negotiate to get to somewhere in the middle where, in my view, we are meeting the needs of Pennsylvania residents, meeting the needs of the Commonwealth, meeting the needs of the various departments that provide human services, transportation, safety for our communities, education, without far exceeding our revenues. And that really is the challenge. As we've seen over the past 2 years, the governor has come in with a very high spend request, and we try then to pull him back in while at the same time meeting those essential needs.
So really, of all the jobs that you are elected to do as a state representative, this is number one, right? Getting a budget done.
It absolutely is. That is why we are elected. To fund government, to fund the services that our communities need, to make people's lives better through the process while also being fiscal responsible. And that, you know, I'm excited to be the new Republican Appropriations Chairman. I look forward to taking on this task. I've served on the committee for 6 years, and I've learned the ins and outs of the budgetary process. So it's very exciting for me to pull my colleagues in, to pull my committee members in, so that we can have a legitimate discussion on this upcoming budget to make sure that we are being responsible with the taxpayer dollars, because ultimately that's what we are elected to do.
So talk a little bit about the pageantry of the day. What can we expect as the budget's being delivered? Where does it happen? And how are the kind of nuts and bolts logistics of the day?
Well, there's obviously a lot of fanfare around the budget. It is a big deal, and it's going to happen on the House floor. The governor will present his budget. We will all be present. He'll go through the different reasons of why he wants to do what he wants to do, you know, how it's going to help whoever he believes it's going to help. He'll put forth other proposals that maybe not all of us agree with. We're anticipating some of that, as we've seen in the past 2 years. Again, we're anticipating that he will come in with a higher spend than our revenues, but we expect that, and I think that's part of the process. Again, it's the beginning steps of the budget process. But this is how we govern Pennsylvania. This is how we fund Pennsylvania. That is what we do as a government. The budget funds all those agencies that are out there in the communities, you know, helping people, keeping our communities safe, teaching our children, and providing for our families. And In the end of the day, though, we need to look for ways to improve collaboratively. It can't be us versus them. It needs to be, what are we doing to help the people that we represent in our communities? And I hope that over the past 2 years, the governor realizes that we all need to work together to make sure that we're doing what's right for Pennsylvania, not just what's right for one political party.
So when we get this budget proposal, it's many hundreds of pages that we go through. And would you say it's fair that a lot of what's in this proposal is agreeable, that ultimately there are many more things that we agree on and that we're just kind of nibbling around the edges, so to speak, just kind of rounding out some numbers versus there's major fights? It's usually just a couple of items that kind of cause that major disagreement, right?
Sure, and I think in most cases those are going to be the policy issues that the governor embeds into the budget. Things like legalizing recreational marijuana. That's going to be a hard sell for a lot of our members, and rightly so, because it does create a lot of challenges for our communities that you won't hear discussed as part of that process. But yeah, there's a lot of things that are in the budget that we will agree with. But what will make the headlines are the more extreme, basically initiatives that the governor puts out there. That's where you'll see the headlines grab. But as you said, the nuts and bolts, the general fund bill is what we're talking about right now, and that's basically, I look at it like that's the number that you spend, that's what you agree to spend, and then the code bills, which we'll get into, are how you spend that money, the nitty gritty. And a lot of that is things that will help our communities, that a lot of us agree to. But unfortunately, what you see happen in political climates and in a lot of the discussions, you only see the headlines go to those more extreme policy views that, kind of are this side and this side. And you won't hear the discussion so much about the parts that we do need to fund and make sure get pushed forward.
So let's end with this. Is there anything that has happened during a budget address that has really you found humorous, that there was a moment during your last, this will be your seventh budget address,
Yes.
something that made you chuckle?
Well, I don't know that I chuckle so much as maybe have an expression of shock.
Okay, sure, that's good enough.
I mean, as you said, though, there are things that I can agree with. I think that our caucus can agree with, and there are other things that we will never agree with, and that's just the nature of the process. As I said in the beginning, it is the beginning stages of the budget process. It's a long process. We're going to be talking about this budget for months. Hopefully we get a budget passed that is fiscally responsible. We're looking at some very real concerns with declining revenues, and it's not something new. It's been happening for years. And if we continue down that path, we're going to find ourselves in a situation where we can't afford to fund the essentials that we should as a government. And so that's why we have to find some common ground, some reasonable approaches to budgeting that are responsible with taxpayer dollars while also meeting those essential needs that we provide as a Commonwealth.
Okay, and another episode of the Struzzi Scoop.
All right, thank you.